In this video, we're going to look at the LZX Contour, a 3-channel high-pass filter. In the world of analog video synthesis, a high-pass filter is sometimes called an edge detector. One of my favorite things about analog filters is their ability to take harder edged shapes like you might get from a dual oscillator and add a little bit of blobbiness and organic edges. So here I'm working with some shapes from the dual shape generator and using all 3 channels of contour to add some more interest and complexity. So I'm going to break down something like this patch and we'll look at using contour to generate some interesting patterns. So to begin, I've got my matrix mixer patched in. I'm just going to use this to get a nice color mix. And let's take a look at what happens. I'm going to use the dual shape generator for this. So let's start with a nice little pattern here so you can see what that looks like. And then let's put it into one channel of the contour. So you've got a cutoff control. And as you can see, it's sort of pulling out the edges of that image. And as I change the cutoff, we'll get more or less of that shape filled in. And again, we could take a look at what that looks like versus the original. So you see there we have the full shape, and here we're just getting some of the edges. We also have a control voltage input, so I can take that from a second source. Let's say a oscillator, and you can see this oscillator is creating some bars, and we're just getting that filter effect here, wherever that bar may be. Now, of course, one way to make this effect a little bit stronger would be to use a key after the contour. This is a great little trick to create some more interesting hard edge shapes. So you can see just by changing the filter settings, we're getting some more interesting stuff here. So there's something nice and a little blobby. And of course we could change the threshold on the keyer. And we can use slower modulation sources as well. So I'm going to take a second channel of the contour and put that into another channel of my matrix mixer. And in this case, I'm going to take a slow LFO and we'll put that into the CV control. So you can see what that's doing there. So now we have this second shape kind of breathing in. Let me make that really bright so you can see what's going on there. So that's just sweeping the filter cut off across the entire image. And just for fun, we could take a third variation. So I'm taking another output from the dual oscillator, putting that into the CV of this other channel, and taking the output there into a third channel. So this one's got a kind of slowly scrolling bar. And you can see what that's doing as well. And contour tends to work best with fairly complex sources. So we'll get a little more action coming out of here. If we use a staircase, we should see something a little more detailed. There we go. And you can see the shape gets these kind of curved edges to it, which is a really nice feature of analog filtering that I enjoy. So now that we have a basic understanding of how the module works, let's take a look at how we can use it to generate some fairly intricate shapes. So in this next example, we're going to start with a pretty simple shape from the dual shape generator. So you can see we've got this kind of gradient that just sort of swoops through the middle of the frame. Let me make this white so we can see a little bit better. Now if I go and just key that shape, you'll see we get this nice swoosh. And we can use the threshold control to change sort of the relative size of that shape. But by plugging in a contour, I can get something a little bit more dynamic. So you can see now it's doing something a little bit different. And when you get to the edge of these cutoffs, sometimes you get these really pretty sort of static-y gradients, which is very nice. But another thing I could do here is take several different outputs from my contour that are all coming off of the same shape, and we can add and subtract them to each other to get sort of the difference of different filterings before we go ahead and key them. So in this case, I'm using a processing module and I'm subtracting the B input. So now I'm getting the difference of these two high-pass filters, and that's going to give me something much more dynamic. Again, I can go in and modulate each of these filters individually. Now because these connections normal, so because the top one connects to all that's below it, I'm going to start modulating my second channel first. There we go. That way it doesn't affect the top channel. And I'll use another source to modulate the top channel. And so now by playing around, we can get kind of these blobby sort of things going on. And now again, I could take this third channel of contour. I'm going to plug that also into a processing module. And I'm going to just let that normal connection from the first one flow down there. I'm going to take this output into another keyer. And what this is going to do is just give me another variation of a shape to play with. So maybe I'll make my first one purple. My second one's going to be just kind of blue. And there we go. So now we just have another variation on this same sort of idea. And this is really great for getting these kind of blobby, almost lava lamp type of effects. And I can change that speed there. And you know what, let me take this second one. And we'll try to get a nice scrolling move in a different direction here. There we go. So now we kind of have two scrolling oscillators sort of beating off of each other. And again, one of the things I really love about analog filters is just you get these nice, organic, sort of blobby edges to things. That's really a pretty cool effect. To make this even a little bit more complicated, we could take another one of our shape outputs and put that into our CV input. There's no reason you can't put extremely complicated image sources into here. Could even put a live video into the CV. Let's use this other shape so we get something a little less related going on. And so there you go. You can get these nice blobs for days. It's especially nice with the high definition capabilities of the ESG3. You can get some really wild, detailed sort of stuff going on. And if you want to even a little bit more complexity, you could use a staircase or something to generate some more detail here. So there we just have more and more blobs. So we could do the same, or no. We could take that from the 64 output. And so that's a nice simple way to get started using Contour to create more organic and interesting shapes. And in our final patch, we'll take a look at using Contour with an external video source. So in this final patch, we'll look at using the Contour with an external video input. So I have some footage here of two dancers. This was shot against black, so it should give us a nice high contrast example of what high pass filtering like the Contour can do to external video footage. So to start, I just have the RGB outputs from my TBC2 going into one channel of a matrix mixer. This is being played off an external Raspberry Pi. So to just give you a basic idea of how the effect works, I'm going to take the Y output. This is a very convenient feature of TBC2. It has a dedicated black and white output of your footage. And I'm going to put that into a Contour. And let's just take a look at the raw effect of what this is doing. So I'm going to plug that into another channel. I'm going to turn this all the way up to white. Okay, so we have the Contour plugged in now, and you can see we're getting this kind of ghosty kind of smearing of the image. I just have this set to all white. Maybe I'll just set it to color so we can see better. So you can see that purple fringe starting to come in along the edges of the image. And that's sort of your basic bread and butter sort of high pass filtering effect. I'll set this to all white so we'll get this really extreme kind of ghosting. You could also do something cool. I'm going to mult my external video source. And I'm going to use it in both the Contour input and the CV input. And what that's going to do is it's going to smear out that image just where the highlights are. Because now it's only, now it's filtering differently based on the brightness of the image. So you can see the feet and the faces and the brighter parts getting smeared more. So that's a pretty cool effect. Now, of course, we can also take this and key it. So I'm actually going to keep this where it is. I'm going to set this back to that purple color because that's really nice. And then because we have more channels of Contour, I'm going to take two other variations of this. I'll just focus on this one for now. And we'll key that. And we'll take that keyed output into another channel. And let's just make this one green. So now you can see what the keyer is doing. We're getting those kind of green details. And this is what would be known in the video world typically as an edge enhancer or an edge extractor. So that's sort of what we're doing here. You could just see it pulling out those details. And then because we have another channel of Contour available, I'm going to take that and use that to CV the keyer. And so what this is going to do is sort of take the difference of these two filters and then use that as the key. So this is going to give us an even more refined and detailed sort of edge. Now, right now, this CV input that's coming from the multed version of the video is flowing through and keying all of these different channels. So let's change that. Let's get a scrolling oscillator involved here. So now we really see that green stuff. And this is a really nice dynamic video source, so it's giving us some pretty cool options to play with. So there you can see that key really going for it, really starting to smear and get pretty wild. We could also use this to subtract the edges away. That's going to be a little bit tricky in this particular video footage just because it's so dark. but something that's a little bit brighter, that might work really nicely. And yeah, so there you can see, oh, nice. Some different ways. You can use this very, very subtly. So if we take the key out, we just get these nice kind of subtle smears around the highlights. And then obviously we can go to full mayhem if we wish. So hopefully that gives you some ideas for a few different uses of the contour. I'm a big fan of analog high-pass filters, especially for external video, but also for shapes. They've just got a really nice organic quality to them, and they add a little something special to every patch. Having 3 of them in a single package opens up a ton of possibilities for shape and pattern generation, as well as processing. You can also start to cross-modulate them with each other. There's really just a lot of fun you can have. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave any questions in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.